And welcome to the Country Telegraph. Nice to have your company. It's a Monday. I hate Mondays. I don't hate Mondays. I dislike them immensely. Tuesdays are okay. Wednesday, well, we're getting towards a Friday. Thursday, we live in anticipation. And then 5 o'clock on Friday, that's when living starts. Well, hopefully. See some nice parts of Australia too. It's a magnificent country we live in. Before we get into our first guest, just want to go through some of the headlines or news that's making headlines around Australia in the regional, rural and outback regions of this great country. The New South Wales Labor government has failed to sign the required deed of agreement to progress Narandra's water treatment plant business case. That's nearly 6 months after Commonwealth funding was awarded. Member for Hughenden, Steph Cook, said the ongoing delay is preventing Flinders Shire Councillor from progressing critical work, wait for this, to deliver clean drinking water to the community. Incredible, isn't it? Just incredible in this day and age. You cannot have clean drinking water. Just gobsmacked. Cotton growers across southern New South Wales have completed 80% of picking with surprising yields, despite challenging water cost and extreme summer heat. Australia's competition watchdog has fined Coles and Western Australian-based Browns Foods operations $39,600 each for separate alleged contraventions of the Dairy Code of Conduct. Billion-dollar agriculture investor and developer Go Farm has cut 3/4 of its workforce at its Lake Boga tomato farm after ending its contract with processor Cargome that was due to a global oversupply. If you want to find out more about what's happening throughout the important parts of Australia, the regional, rural and outback areas, don't forget to subscribe to the Country Telegraph on either YouTube or Rumble, or follow us at Facebook and X.
In the wake of the January Longwood fire, our community stepped up. But the scale of recovery now demands partnership beyond the local level.
216 homes, 520 sheds.
Families displaced, memories gone, and businesses disrupted. When people lose their home, they lose more than a building. They lose history and their sense of place. Our community is exhausted, navigating trauma, insurance, and the long, complex road to rebuilding. And this isn't their first time. Our community has shown extraordinary strength through disasters in 2009, 2022, and the 2024 floods and drought, and again in 2026. But the cumulative toll is significant. The impacts stretch across more than 20 communities within the Shire. To help people rebuild safely and quickly is a priority for Council. Our team have been out in the community helping individuals navigate planning, building and wastewater requirements. We are continuing to advocate for support from the state to help individuals rebuild their lives, whilst we are working with people who are living in sheds, caravans or with family, trying to rebuild their lives piece by piece. Recovery isn't just about rebuilding homes, it's about rebuilding lives. We need spaces where people can come together, access support and begin to heal. That's why we're calling for a dedicated relief and community centre in Alexandra and ongoing recovery hubs in Alexandra, Yea and out into our communities. Places where people can access mental health support, information and face-to-face help, all in one place. This is one of the most significant bushfire impacts on private land in Australia. It has devastated our farming community, livestock lost, fencing wiped out, and crops, orchard and infrastructure destroyed. Recovery won't take months, it will take years. Many producers are nearing retirement. Insurance gaps and delays are adding enormous pressure. Without support, we risk losing not just farms, but generations of knowledge and productivity. We're calling for targeted support, flexible grants, fencing and infrastructure recovery, crop and orchard restoration, and income support so that families can stay on their land. In just 24 days, our region lost $3.47 million in visitor spending. Some towns saw visitation drop by up to 90%. More than 550 local businesses have been impacted. These are the backbone of our communities, and they need immediate and ongoing support. That includes direct grants, local spend incentives, tourism campaigns, and rebuilding the assets that bring visitors back. We also need to rebuild critical infrastructure, roads, bridges, and essential services to keep our communities connected. Supporting local businesses keeps people employed, keeps families here, and keeps our towns alive. We're open for business, and we're ready to welcome visitors back. This is a $105 million recovery challenge, and it's beyond what a small rural council can deliver alone. Murrindindi has been hit hard, but we are a resilient community. With the right support, we can rebuild homes, restore farms, and strengthen our local economy. We're inviting governments, industry, and philanthropy to partner with us, not just to recover, but to build a stronger, more resilient future. Because recovery doesn't happen alone, it happens together.
The federal government has rejected a Queensland proposal for a $94 million joint restocking package for primary producers following devastating livestock losses of around probably 90,000, I think it was, head of cattle and sheep during the recent floods, which is just enormous, isn't it? The decision has sparked backlash from state leaders, farming bodies and local councils. Shane McCarthy is the General President of AgForce Queensland, a leading agricultural advocacy group and a fifth-generation sheep, cattle and cane producer from Hughenden. He has extensive experience in the industry. Before his presidency, Shane served as AgForce's Deputy Chair and North Regional Director. He is also a Flinders Shire Councillor, actively engaging in local governance. First of all, Shane, thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Mike, and how are we?
Very well, thank you. Look, can I just ask you about these North Queensland floods? Isn't it interesting in this day and age of everything at the tip of our fingers instantly, how soon we forget?
Yeah, so we had some pretty devastating floods around through. We do get a wet season. We are in the tropics here. But this was an unreasonable amount of rain in a short period of time in a reasonably smaller area. So 2019 we had some massive floods up in this area that took a lot of cattle out and a lot of country. But this was, while it wasn't as widespread as 2019, where those areas where it did flood, they were every as bit as high levels, or even in some cases higher levels than 2019. And we're talking just extraordinary amounts of water in a short period of time. And then when that happens, then the temperature drops and the exposure happens. But also in this sort of area where we're talking about, it's heavy black soil, so that they then struggle to get to dry land. And when they do try to get to dry land, the effort of ploughing through those heavy soils can have an effect on the cattle as well, let alone the drop in temperature. They're being wet, they get rain scald, and we're talking waves of water coming through, and just those cattle that have got to higher ground just washing away.
Yeah, it's absolutely devastating. How did it affect the communities, and how long do you think it will take, not just for the communities, of course, but for the individuals to get back on their feet?
Mike, just to give you an indication, one of those producers who in 2019 lost 90% of his herd. He has just this was the year he would have been back to full production. So that's 7 years of herd rebuilding that he did, to only lose 90% of his herd again. We talk about resilience and how tough farmers are, but look, everybody's cup overflows to when you get to a certain point. And I know this family; they are salt of the earth people. They will try and pick themselves up, but yeah, I'll tell you what, they're a bit tougher than me.
Yeah, I don't know how they will do it, but again, isn't it interesting in the bush, especially the farmers, and I don't know whether it's further away, it just makes you tougher, but they will get through it, and they at this stage are probably just marshalling together the brain power and thinking, now how do we do it? It's going to be bloody tough. Got to do it. Tell me about the restocking package proposed, which would really help.
So in 2019, what we had was a package where the government co-sponsored, I suppose you would call it. So they put up a sum of money, and then that was matched by the producers. They were able to go to the bank and then say, look, we've got 100,000 from the grant from the government, or it was up to 400 in those days, to be able to. The bank would then match. You would then match that through a bank loan to be able to buy cattle in to restock and get it on your feet a little bit quicker, because we're not talking about this year's produce that's gone, this year's income that's gone. It's next year's, in the year after's. So it's a long-term proposition. But yeah, that's what was the proposal. It was probably a little bit more than that this year to allow for inflation. But in some of that, also the proposal was to isolate some of that money to be able to put towards flood mitigation, and it was very broad. There is, different types. Whatever the producer could come up to be able to flood mitigate, whether that be, higher mounds, because we're talking some very flat country here. So whether that was building higher mounds, whether that was putting helicopter pads in or refueling pads, because in these areas, that's how they get around and they drop fodder in these types of situations. Is the only way they can get around is through the air. So, there was a lot of fodder drops going on. There was a lot of trying to move cattle to where it was drier areas. But, in some of these places, there wasn't any drier areas.
Why did the government reject it?
We don't seem to know, Mike. All we got was all we heard was just it was a no. Through back channels, we have heard that because there was other crisis, there was the fuel and fertiliser, and I would suggest in some of these areas the fuel price, especially, and the fertiliser price will contribute to these guys' tale of woe. They would be just getting out in the last month or so. They would have been getting out and trying to find out actually what the exact numbers of how many stock they have lost. Yes, there's a figure of about 90,000, but there could be well more than that. We don't really know until they get out. We're talking vast areas of country, and some country that you just can't get around. We are hearing that there is, instead of producers using 2 helicopters to muster, they are going back to 1 because of the price of fuel. We are also hearing that the avgas is limited in certain areas where they will just have to do what they can with what they've got, and there is only a certain amount of fuel there.
It's absolutely incredible. What about the Queensland government, Kristal's mob?
Oh, look, we can't fault them. They have been on the ground from day one. They have absolutely been out and about, and that probably has to do with the makeup of the government. There is a lot of primary producers or sons and daughters of primary producers, so that's helpful. They get it. The Premier and his ministers were on the ground pretty much as soon as they were able to, and also making sure that they weren't in the way. They were there to help, but sometimes you just need those leaders there to know that you're being heard. And it's these are the leaders of the country So you need to be able to know. It just gives you a lift to be able to say that these guys are here, they get it, they see it, and they actually care.
Must have been tough on you because, I mean, you're watching people who you know, friends, probably family, go through a terrible, terrible time. Tell me, how did you cope?
Oh, look, I'm not in amongst it. You are right. I did see friends and some family that went through it, and you do feel for them. But it's, you got a job to do. So it's my job to make sure that the right people are getting heard, and the right people are hearing what needs to be going on. So that's my job. You got a job to do, and you just go and do it. But look, in comparison to what I had to do to what these guys are going through, it's not really comparable.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? I think we need to take stock of ourselves, and I think people in major cities need to understand that without the farmer, they're going to have a very, very hungry winter, hungry spring, summer, and so forth. And I think it's just terrible. Speaking of people going hungry, what's your views on the budget?
Yeah, probably can't put that on TV, Mike. But it was a bit of I don't know how to say it, a bit of a nothing budget, if I would say. It wasn't. Look, we did have some carve-outs for agriculture, and every little bit that helps in regards to trust and capital gains and that sort of thing. But we don't know. It's a bit of a funny budget. Is like, every financial advisor I see come along has got a different idea about what the implications are. So yeah, it's not the best budget for people with assets, and trying to make sure that they can be able to pass that asset on to the next generation. We were told years ago by all the people in the know to put things into trust to be able to look after them, to be able to pass them on to the next generation. And all of a sudden they've changed the rules on those trusts. So look, in those areas, we remain to see and try and decipher what we got. We did get a bit of a carve out, which was what we were trying to get a little bit of help there. I did notice that there's less money for in biosecurity, and look, this is what we in agriculture in Australia, that is the non-negotiable thing that we all talk about is biosecurity. We've got very high biosecurity standards. We are able to sell our produce overseas because of that high biosecurity standard, and we need to keep it. We're a relatively disease-free country, and we need to make sure that it remains that way. Just to the north of me, there is foot and mouth and lumpy skin, and it's getting closer every day. So we need, we probably shouldn't be reducing the biosecurity budget, but increasing it. I did notice that there's less money in there for the ferals, pigs, dogs, cats, foxes, but there's a little bit more money for native animals. I don't get the logic. The logic would say that those ferals that they're decreasing the funding for are the major problem for the native species they're trying to keep.
Yeah, I think government sort of lost the plot, and because you've led the way here, I won't say what I'm thinking either, just in case it offends a government minister or somebody. What about fuel? And I was reading today, in fact, and yesterday, a couple of stories about that they expect us to go into rationing. I think they said in July rationing would start if we're in this situation. Already tough for people on the land. How will that affect them if we are into rationing, and how do you think it will affect Australia?
Well, look, it's just not the availability of it. It's and that's a big enough problem as it is. It is getting a little bit better at the moment, but from all reports, it will get worse again before it gets better. and that is, it's just not the availability of it, it's the price of it. I mean, literally, we saw the Bowser price or the price of fuel double, and that's not something that primary producers can absorb. We are price takers, so we don't get to sit there and go, well, I'm going to put a surcharge on what I produce now at the farm gate, or I'm going to double the price of what I get because I've got to double it because the fuel price and the fertiliser prices has doubled. We don't get to do that, and some of these we do have to transport some of our produce to a long way to get to market. The big thing is also fertiliser. So the fertiliser prices are just not, and it's bad enough in cropping. You're halving your yield if you're not being able to fertilise. But the flow-on effect in that is also in the northern part of the country where I am. Cattle and stock are highly reliant on supplement feeding, which a lot of urea goes into. So, the fertiliser price affects that as well. The flow-on price of the fuel also is, it's polypipe. It's just absolutely everything, and it's just not the availability of it. It's actually the price of it as well.
It's a horrible time, and all for a war that probably, the jury's out on that one. But it's terrible, and not just for Australia, for many parts of the world. Although we are suffering because not too what's the word, keen. I'll be nice again. Not too keen on the federal government's jump to attention to certain countries. We need to look after our own first of all, and most importantly, look after the bush. If somebody wants to find out more about AgForce, Shane, how do they do that?
Oh, look, Google AgForce Queensland, and my number's available on those websites. There's plenty of staff willing to get there. The more people that is in agriculture and a member of an agriculture advocacy group, the better. I do care, I suppose. I'm a bit parochial. You're better off in AgForce, but just be a member of an advocacy group, because that's the only way we get to change stuff. And we do a lot of work in advocacy of making sure stuff and ludicrous stuff doesn't get to where before it even hits the ground. Just be a member, get involved,
and then let you roll up your sleeves and do some hard work. Shane McCarthy, thank you so much for your time. This is the Country Telegraph.
Been an amazing weekend with our camel racing here. We've got record-breaking crowds here again this year. It's just gotten more and more people, and we're so excited to see them all come out to do their Melbourne Cup of Camel Racing. It's an event that you've got to come out. It's hard, I know we're in the middle of nowhere and it is a big job effort to get here, but we're so excited to have you all come out here, and we know you're going to have a great time out here. And the more the merrier. Come out, enjoy our event, have a look at what we've got to offer here in Boulia, and we know you just won't regret it.
I'm a little bit nervous, but more excited than nervous. So it's just riding, right? What could possibly go wrong?
The big question after seeing that, how would you like your camel? One hump or two? I've been wanting to use that for a long time, but I'll get back to being serious. Director, our next guest is Krista Hauritz, the Director of Krista Hauritz Tourism and Marketing and Events. Now, Kristal has a love of country, camels, a passion for regional Australia, and a weakness for travel, having worked in the tourism industry for some 25 years. Now, Krista has had senior roles in regional tourism organisations, local and state government, and private enterprise. Now, Krista is here to tell us about some more brilliant outback events. We're going to talk today about the Boulia Camel Races, or the Melbourne Cup of Camel Races, which will be held between the 17th and 19th of July. So start planning and look forward to, those camels are just amazing. Not my favourite pet, but they are amazing. They are just absolutely amazing, aren't they?
Oh my gosh, Mike, great to see you. They are, and before I started working with camel races, I had no idea how much they're loved and cared by their owners and the greater audience as well. We have over 3,000 people annually make it out to Boulia. For those viewers and listeners who don't know where Boulia is, it's on, I guess best explained, it's called on the edge of the Channel Country, on the edge of the Simpson Desert. And it's about 3 hours south of Mount Isa by car, and a short 18 hours northwest of Brizzy. So you can make it in 2 days if you only drive 9 hours a day. And it's a beautiful, tiny community. Mike, there's something between, the population falls roughly between 300 and 350 people. So you're basically looking at a town that's population increases tenfold or more during the event.
Amazing. We heard about this. I think they kicked off, would be like almost 20 years ago, maybe a bit longer, 1997.
97, yeah, it's 29 years this year.
Whoa.
I've only been working with them since about, I think, 2015. But yeah, there was a really instrumental people who got it on the map. It was originally called Desert Sands, and it was the build-up for the year 2000, so they called it Desert Sands 2000, heading into the new sanctuary. But it's an amazing experience. I hadn't been to Boulia before I went to the races, and just the landscape, you feel like you're on another planet. Like the drive from, I cheat and fly into Mount Isa and drive down, but it's like this beautiful, I guess it's red soils, red dirt, but really green, particularly with all the rain that we've had lately, just lush landscapes around. And watching these camels in action, it is quite astounding. And as you can see from some of the footage, the crowd really gets into it, and we get all sorts of ages, never alone all sorts of camels.
Do they have flies?
They do. You can fly what we call the mailman run from Townsville on Rex.
Yeah, no. I know you can fly them, but do they actually have flies? I can't stand flies. Anyway,
I can't guarantee that there's no flies, but this time of year, when it's held annually in July, it's so cool, particularly at night. There's no flies on us during winter.
Very good. One to you. Tell me about the prize money and the camels.
It's I believe it's Australia's largest prize pool. It's something like over $20,000, and what that's done over the years is guarantee, like, there are cameliers with their camels that travel from Victoria, New South Wales, Northern Territory, all across Queensland, and descend on Boulia for this race. And it's part of the camel racing route. There's now a camel racing trail that starts at Birdsville in June, and then you make your way up through Baduri, Boulia, then on to Winton Camel Races, Junda Camel Races, and then it kind of culminates at the end of August down in Tara in southwest Queensland. So
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? And it really does typify that there's so much on offer away from the big smoke. I wouldn't imagine they'd have many five-star hotels there, which is a problem for me. But they.
Oh,
But
darling, don't worry, Mike. We have glamping tents.
really?
I'm not pulling your leg on this one. There, about 5 years ago, we had a small bus tour wanting to have, 5-star accommodation, and we said we
course.
can't guarantee like high-end luxury, but these are for camp. I call it luxury camping. So you can buy your pass and then stay in a glamping tent ringside.
Tell me about this glamping thing. I mean, do you have room service? We're talking about stuff that I like here.
We don't have room service, but we do have you do get hot showers and bathroom.
Really? In a tent?
Not inside the tent. So you'll have toilets and showers exclusively for the glamping tents.
Wow. What sort of cost are we looking at for this high-end luxury?
The high-end luxury, you'd be surprised. It's only about, I think it's about $280 a night, and you can literally have up to 4 people in the tent. Most people go double, but if you're single or you're traveling with a group of mates, they can do 4 single beds. They're really large bell tents, and they're quite a beautiful place to stay.
Absolutely amazing. Tell us about the crowds that they are expecting, and where do they come from? I would imagine everywhere.
They literally come from everywhere. So just to give you an idea we usually average around 3,000 people. So at the last event, I'll bring up some of the stats for you. We had nearly over 41% came from interstate, and they literally came from every state of Australia. Most are from New South Wales and Victoria because of our larger populations. But we have people travelling from Tasmania, as far away as WA, and then they cross through the Northern Territory border quite easily, because there's now a sealed road from Winton that goes right through the centre of Australia, travelling into WA. So that's really opened up access for us with that West Australian market. And the rest, just over 50% are other Queenslanders.
That's absolutely amazing. What about internet and stuff like that? I suppose there would be little hot spots around the area.
Yeah, we have as long as you have Telstra, you'll be fine to have your Wi-Fi and things. We've noticed a lot, particularly those with their own vans, are now carrying everything from Starlink to Telstra boosters, whatever it is. And we can even get enough internet where we can live feed. We do live crosses. I won't mention the TV stations.
Yes, you can mention.
But we do live crosses with the morning TV shows because there's some very quirky characters in Boulia, and everyone wants to have a chat with them.
And what about the entertainment? Tell us about that.
It's very hard to explain. Let's just call it eclectic. So at Boulia Camel Races, they don't just race camels. So there are, official camel races on Saturday and Sunday. It culminates on the Sunday with the cup race final, the big race at midday on Sunday. And on Saturday, you'll have, I think it's about 5 or 6 races. Friday afternoon, it kicks off. We have everything from scenic helicopter rides. One of the operators from Winton drives up to Boulia and does scenic helicopter flights, which, I have been on, and they're unbelievable when you see the Channel Country from above. And then we have an area called Meet the Trainers. So you can go meet the people who train these camels, and they treat them like they're absolute pets. And often you camp with your camels. And some of them, one of them called Charlie, was born about 6 years just before the camel races, and he's grown up. He's a local camel and has grown up on the site. Then they have the Great Australian Lawnmower Race, and and amusement rides. And we have lots of live music for the youngies and youngies at heart. So we bring in, usually try and bring homegrown Queenslanders and definitely Aussie performers like Matt Geiger this year, Trent Bell and Heath Milner. So if you're into a bit of country and country rock, you'll really like these guys. Plus we have a DJ playing for the party animals later into the evening.
Especially for you.
I would never do that, Mike.
Do you wear
I would never do that.
Do you wear stilettos or RM Williams?
Sorry?
Do you wear stilettos, high
Oh, no,
heel,
mate.
or do you wear
It's all-
RM Williams?
It's all RMs or boots. Rubber-based boots usually. Jeans, a parka. It gets cool at night because we're on the edge of the Simpson Desert during this event. It can get cool and you wear beanies and gloves at night. But what's fascinating, you're allowed to have open campfires. So they have volunteers that bring in campfire wood and everyone's camping in large groups, small groups, and just really chill out. And the funniest thing here is when they're not racing camels, they have things like, how do I say it? Not only the ride-on lawnmowers race, but there's a new one called Boots and Jocks race. So they're literally, guys, there's a guys section and a girls section and anyone in between, where they literally running race down the track where the camels race at a separate time, luckily, literally in their jocks, but you've got to wear a boots and hat.
Of course, otherwise you'd be undressed. That's absolutely hilarious. I don't know if I would be part of it because.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever be game to do it. I'm probably lost my flat stomach, but it is hilarious to watch.
Wow.
And there's a couples one called the Swag Roll Race, where they jump in their swags and roll down the racetrack.
There's some events for the next Olympics in Queensland. I mean, that could be the perfect. Could you imagine lining up for the swag roll race from the United States?
And they probably wouldn't understand what a swag is,
But I would imagine though some libations beforehand would have been the fuel to set the tone.
yes, definitely.
Now, tell me, besides driving there, which I think would be a magnificent trip, tell me about other ways. You mentioned you could fly, various ways of getting in there. Tell us how they can get in there. Tell us about how they can get tickets and the cost of.
Cool. So to get into the races is really easy. We sell tickets based on like a weekend pass, and the weekend pass, I will be biased, but I think it's the best $120 you'll ever spend. That covers you entry for Friday and Saturday and Sunday night, but also if you're camping, you can come up. That covers you for 10 days camping and 9 nights. And
Amazing.
yeah, so it's a really like cost-effective way, and the community did it. That's included with your pass, the camping, to encourage people to stay longer in Boulia. And they've got a general store, a pub, service station. So that means that everyone spends money locally and helps the community. It's actually also the biggest fundraising platform for the community. So the kids, and trust me, they're not in jocks, they do mock camel races where they get dressed up as camels and all sorts of things and raise money for their local PNC in the school. So things like that, it really, and the visitors we get, all ages, it's family friendly. Under 18s are completely free. So if you want to bring your kids, we get lots of travellers from their kids and families travelling even just down from Mount Isa. They treat Boulia as their country cousins, and a lot travel from Mount Isa and bring their families down.
Absolutely amazing. There's something about the bush, isn't there? Something about real Australia. No traffic lights, a couple of stop signs maybe, police who are sympathetic on the open roads, maybe not, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But there is something that's just fantastic about the bush, and this is one of those events. As I said, how would you like your camel, one hump or two? If somebody wants to find out more about this event and also about what you do, how do they do that?
For Boulia Camel Races, just type in bouliacamelraces.com.au.
Krista, it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. I have thoughts about maybe doing that myself, heading up there. I'll talk to the good wife about that one, but I think it would be a magnificent time. We might even take our cameras up there. Who knows?
That would be awesome. If you head up, let us know and we'll get you a glamping tent.
And what about room service? So you leave that part out all the time.
I do. Maybe it's something for us to work on next year.
Room service, but actually you couldn't knock on the tent because you wouldn't hear it anyway. Krista, thank you so much for your time. This is the Country Telegraph.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Monica Sutherland. I'm a farmer and I'm part of the Protect Dookie and Golden Valley Group. In September last year, we were included as a proposed renewable energy zone in Vicgrid's published plan with absolutely no consultation. 4 k's down that power line, 240 shipping container batteries are being installed at Pine Lodge. And last night we learned our friends and neighbours at Gurumbat have been told another 250 batteries have been proposed just 800 metres from their town. The rezoning is paving the way for industrial-sized solar developments and will create a corridor from Pine Lodge all the way to Glenrowan. The Vicgrid Chief Executive Alistair Parker told us new data centres require massive amounts of power to operate. It isn't about the environment or lowering power bills. I've seen people raise the point that we have a choice on whether to install solar panels. However, Alistair Parker said on Win News last week that Vicgrid has and will use compulsory powers to install transmission lines to these new builds through neighbouring properties, regardless of whether they said yes or no to solar development.
Our guest today is Dr. Peter Reid, Chairman and Scientific Advisor of the Australian Environment Foundation, AEF. Now, the AEF is a non-profit, membership-based organisation that seeks to protect the environment while preserving the rule of law, property rights, very important these days, and the freedom of the individual that underpin the material progress that is required to do so. They take an evidence-based, solution-focused approach to environmental issues. Now, Peter himself is a geophysicist with more than 100 publications in international journals and books to his name. He worked in the Great Barrier Reef for 35 years. Now, at the AEF, they believe in the absolute importance of independent review and robust validation of the science used to justify regulation, particularly where it has far-reaching economic and community impacts. Now, Peter's here to discuss one of the current campaigns, which is Hit It Here, Hauritz there. First of all, Peter Reid, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Tell me about the campaign.
Essentially, as that little thing you had there before was saying, we're pointing out that all the regulations that are put usually on farmers, often based, in fact, very, very often based on unchecked science, drives up the cost of everything for the people in the bush. So, for example, we've got the Mary Burnett region in southeast Queensland. There, it's the Bundaberg is almost like a food bowl of Queensland, and they've got all these regulations because supposedly they're killing the Great Barrier Reef, and those rivers don't even run into the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. It's just completely ridiculous. So we're suggesting that type of science, the science behind that decision, which was pretty ropey if it existed at all, in fact, needs to go before an independent review by, we're suggesting, the Queensland Productivity Commission to test whether, it has a few flaws in it. Now it's going to come out, either I've gone mad or it will have a lot of flaws in it. And then the government can decide whether it wants to keep those regulations on those Bundy farmers. And that's just one of, I could give you 100 different examples. I'll do that if you ask me, of where you've got bad science damaging the agriculture, and also, by the way, damaging the environment in many cases. I can explain that too. And it drives up the cost of living, and we've got a campaign where we're asking the Queensland Government to start this science checking in the Queensland Productivity Commission. Why would you not want to check the science a little bit more when it's affecting all our farmers and the cost of living so much?
I think government, and we have two cases which we have been focused on for a while. One is the moringa plant, which is one of the great offerings from nature to humanity, and the other is the fire ants. And we wonder which office had the people in that made these decisions. And I think it was something like 500 feet below the ground, because obviously that's what ostriches do, put their head as far as they can into the ground. Well, they're in the office and creating such mayhem. And there are other alternatives, but to ban the moringa plant and to do what they're doing with the fire ants, and there are other ways of hitting those pesky ants on the head. You must get absolutely frustrated with the decisions made that have no basis at all, or very little credibility when it comes to science.
Well, exactly. And the trouble is that, we have a fundamental problem in our scientific institutions that, if you go back 25 years, groups like the CSIRO, you put them on a pedestal up here, you could question them, but they were right. They just got things right. They weren't ideological. They weren't pushing the green bandwagon or something like that. But those days are over. So we've got our scientific institutions which are no longer fully trustworthy. And the problem for a government is that you've got to go with the science, and the science from CSIRO says, for example, you've got to do this with the fire ants, or Bundy farmers are killing the reef, and then the government's hands are tied. So in fact, the government's almost become a puppet of the scientific institutions which decide what the science says. Now, of course, for a Labor government, this is great because they want to take control of all the farms. They want to tell the farmers to lose less fertiliser, or do this or do that, or not cut down trees, or springing up everywhere. But for a Conservative government, it's a big problem, because how do you go against those scientific institutions which have become political and are against you, and they're ideological and they're very powerful? Every scientific institution, like say the Australian Institute of Marine Science, would have 3 or 4 publicity people. CSIRO would have dozens of people feeding stuff into the media. So there needs to be a scientific group that does the audits of their work, which would also, by the way, make those other groups much more reliable if they knew that they were going to be audited. But the problem we've got now is that despite, I think, the Conservative side of politics knowing they are essentially being ransomed, blackmailed, hijacked by the science institutions, they seem to be, well, I'd have to say, very, very reticent to do this, check the science. So we're actually not getting very far with the Kristal government on this at the moment. I'm still very hopeful that we might get somewhere, but maybe there's going to have to be a little bit more hard arm twisting occur.
Well, you can do that. I don't want to get so that's just a personal choice here, and I'll keep that to myself. If you notice, though, I mean, you mentioned Kristal. We look at the federal government, look at what the Minns government's doing to the farming community, led by the Allen government in Victoria. It would seem there's a concerted effort, mainly from the left, though, attacking farmers. And as you mentioned, the government seemed to want to take control, which they couldn't because they wouldn't know what they're doing. But they have this great desire to control the rural areas and push those pesky farmers out wearing gumboots and not washing their hands every second of the day. And there's flies and everything. We don't want to know about it. But the government and the left at the moment, is it just my imagination, or do you think there is and if you look at Starmer's government in the UK, their love for farmers is basically zero, isn't it?
Exactly. So you've got the left, which really just don't seem to understand where their food comes from, and I genuinely think they have no idea. But then you've got the Conservative side, who they know what the situation is, but they don't seem to do anything about it. So, you know, with in Victoria, let's say you get rid of the present Labor government, do you think that the Liberal Party run from, you know, Melbourne is going to actually repeal all of those regulations? For example, we've the minister here, the Prime Minister's minister, a guy called Tony Perrott, in Parliament stood up and said brilliantly that in Queensland we have 121,356 regulations that face Queensland. A lot of those are on farms, right? It's just crazy over the top. But are we going to actually repeal those? It's one thing to say, tut tut, isn't it terrible? Labor's given us all these regulations. But if you're not prepared to repeal those, well, what's the point? So that's the problem we've got at the moment. I think everybody on the Conservative side realises that Labor brings in a whole bunch of rules, which are many unrealistic. They hurt the environment, they hurt the economy, they actually hurt the people in the cities. For example, and with the environment, for example, we've more or less closed down our hardwood industry in Australia. So we now import hardwood from, you know, some rainforest in Southeast Asia where, you know, no environmental safeguards at all. So we're doing all these things, but where is the Conservative side of politics, at least on the Liberals and the National side, that will actually repeal those, or will they just look after the Labor regulations, nurture them until they're chucked out of power and Labor comes in again and the ratchet and the roller coaster just continues with more and more regulations? So that's my question.
Tell me about the Queensland Productivity Inquiry and what it was meant to achieve.
Normally, productivity commissions, there's a federal one which has more or less been hijacked by essentially Albo's stacked it with people that it's no longer functioning properly. It normally looks at economic productivity, so anything that affects productivity. So, for example, the Queensland Productivity Commission, which has just recently been set up by this government, and I think I congratulate them on doing that. I think they've done a good job in doing it. They're doing a big investigation on whether the CFMEU is jacking up the price of you know, large buildings in the middle of the city, and they're finding some interesting stuff. But in discussions with the Treasurer who runs the Queensland Productivity Commission, his ideas seem to be that it could be cast broad. So the science checking problem actually affects productivity. With reef regulations, Great Barrier Reef regulations, farmers are restricted in how much fertiliser they can put on their land. Graziers can be restricted by vegetation management laws to whether they can clear certain areas. So there's no doubt that the underpinning a lot of the productivity, the economic productivity problems we have, is science which isn't properly checked. So this is why we think it's an ideal vehicle for science checking. It's not a usual thing, but you know, actually when you look all around the world, different organisations are different. Lots of people like me are actually saying we have a problem with our scientific institutions and we need some way of checking. So we're suggesting, hey, why not the QPC?
Which do you think is the greatest threat to those on the land? Do you think it's Mother Nature or God or government?
Oh, look, it's without doubt, it's for most people, it's the government. Yeah, sure, some people will get the most appalling flood, 1 in 500-year flood, and that will wipe them out. There's no doubt about that. But the normal, year in droughts, wet seasons, the normal battling, most of the farmers now, they're pretty brilliant actually in the way they can deal with that. But if you've got your farm that now is essentially controlled by the government, I mean, for example, the latest so-called nature positive legislation, EPBC legislation that Albo has put a whole layer of extra regulation on every farm in the whole of Australia. So they can actually, with that regulations, they can do ultimately a whole bunch of things, especially related to the climate change. So, you hear of the Paris and net zero agreement on greenhouse gases. About 25 to 30% of our reductions in greenhouse gases is going to come from essentially locking up agricultural land under forests. So these are sorts of things that are going to be happening to our country towns. So look, I don't think there's any doubt. You talk to a lot of smaller farmers, not the bigger farmers. The big farmers, the big agribusinesses, they're fine, right? They can employ somebody for their billion acres of ground and they can look after the regulations. But the smaller farmers, they can't, because they're doing actual proper farming and then they have to come home and deal with the regulations and the red tape. So, yeah.
It's a terrible, terrible thing. I just get quite distressed when I see what government is doing. And we're just, as I mentioned before, the fire ants and the moringa plant and the oxygen, they'll ban that shortly because it does something bad to you, or keeps you alive, and so does the moringa plant. Can you just tell me the response from government to your campaign? I would imagine that you haven't received too many hugs.
No, we're a little bit disappointed that the Kristal government is keeping us at arm's length, and we're going to have to step up and point out that it's supposedly a government that is farmer friendly. When you look at the number of regulations, we've got a list of regulations that it's actually repealed. It's not a great deal. And then you ask the simple question, well, why would you not want to do this science checking? On the Great Barrier Reef, so we want, for example, the Burnett Mary, the Bundaberg area, out of reef regulations ultimately. But we're not even asking for that. We're just saying, could we just check the science on why it was put in reef regulations in the first place? And we estimate that would cost a few $100,000 to do that scientific audit, probably less, but let's say a few $100,000. At the moment, every year, governments spend $400 to $500 million on reef rescue, and we can't get a conservative, friendly, farmer-friendly government to just stick their hands in the pocket and check the science for a few $100,000. Now that, to me, look, I'm sure we're going to get there in the end, so I'm not going to criticise, but really, if we don't get there in the end, it will be a shocking indictment in my view, and there's going to be a lot of people we will make sure know that is the case.
I think I don't know whether we'll get there in the end. I think government is as pig-headed. Many people.
Oh no, we'll get there in the end, Mike. I can tell you we'll get there in the end because political climate has changed.
And I think Pauline has also she's shaken the tree a bit, and a few of the apples.
Pauline, yes, that's right. I mean, I've had discussions over many years with Malcolm Roberts on this exact point. Now, I haven't spoken to him at any length on this particular proposal that we've had going for a couple of years, but I don't have any doubt that they can see the problem and that they would be quite prepared to fix it if they got into that position. And that must be something that keeps LNP politicians awake at night.
And I can see that you're worried about that too, that they're not getting a good night's sleep. They can join the entire rural community, maybe.
Well, they can for our case, they can say, yeah, this check the science is obviously a good idea. Why would we not do that? Yeah, let's go and do it, and then we're happy.
Dose of reality. Do you think reality exists now? I mean, It does exist, but do you think people acknowledge it?
Oh yes, it does. Reality is coming home to roost in a major way. It's come home to roost in America. You're seeing it in the UK. We've seen it why do you think One Nation is doing so well in the polls now? Because reality has finally caught up on a number of issues, not just what I'm talking about, whether it's, do you mean we've actually only got 2 working refineries in Australia and we only produce, 10% or 20% of our fuel? People were mugged by reality on that one, and we've been very fortunate. I mean, can you imagine what a different country could do to our fuel supply? So yes, we've been 20 years where reality hasn't mattered, where the truth hasn't mattered, where real facts haven't mattered, but it's kind of mattering now in a major way. So that's another reason why this Check the Science campaign, we're going now, and we're reasonably confident we'll get somewhere. Maybe not in the next year because, maybe this government will do something relatively soon, but we just need to wait a little bit, and I think that we will get what is required, and that will be good, because once we get science checking happening, not just in this little place on the Burnett Merry, we can then apply it to lots and lots of other things, and we can roll back the BS science. And by the way, that will have the great effect of when scientific institutions know they're going to be audited, they will stop becoming ideological, because it will become embarrassing when they are shown that they actually don't have any good reason for the Burnett Merry being listed as roof catchments. They'll start to think, well, we can't allow this to happen again, and they'll become reliable again.
If somebody wants to support the campaign, how do they do that?
Go to the Australian Environment Foundation and you'll find the Check the Science campaign there on the front page, basically.
Peter Ridd, Dr. Peter Ridd, I always forget the doctor bit, forgive me.
Doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
Okay, Peter Ridd, I have to say, I was just thinking about one of our next programs, and Jen will be in contact with you. I think we need to have a very frank discussion about some of the lies they've told about climate change, and get some good people on, such as Mark Morano and yourself, and another guy I'm thinking of, that if he says yes, that will come on and have an open and frank discussion about how our education system has failed miserably. We've got a lot of stupid people running around at the moment, or how the great scam of the last 300 or 400 years has occurred. Invisible catastrophes. So anyway,
no, you're dead right. There's so much to discuss, and by the way, that's all dodgy science you're talking about there.
It is. But have you heard the science is settled? Maybe not. Dr. Peter Ridd, thank you so much for your time. This is the Country Telegraph. Want to find out more, just go to australianenvironment.org, a fantastic organisation, and thank you to Peter Ridd. Okay, we need to find out what's happening with the weather. Not climate change, just good old-fashioned weather.
Hello, Ilana from the Bureau here with your national weather forecast for tomorrow, Tuesday the 26th of May. Let's take a look across the country, where we see a low pressure system sitting over South Australia. Now that low, combined with this trough through the interior of Queensland and New South Wales, as well as a trough about the upper levels of the atmosphere, is bringing an area of enhanced shower, rain and thunderstorm activity through southern and eastern Australia over the next few days. Now we do have a separate severe weather update which covers that rainfall in a little bit more detail. Very different tomorrow out west, where we have a high pressure ridge continue to bring benign and settled conditions, and we also have dry air moving from the southeast up towards the Northern Territory. So let's take a look now at each state, and we'll start in Queensland. Now in Queensland tomorrow morning we are expecting a little bit of fog through inland parts of the east from about Rockhampton and up towards Cairns. Now the main weather story through Queensland tomorrow will be this area of cloud, rain and thunderstorms developing about the southern interior. The southeast will also see some scattered showers, and up towards the central coast, those showers will tend much more isolated as we head further north. Hazardous surf conditions will also persist through the Queensland coast south of the Gari coast. Brisbane tomorrow will see 24 degrees and may see a few of those showers. Into New South Wales tomorrow, where we're seeing the most widespread area of shower and thunderstorm activities across much of the state. Now, there are a few areas which could see some heavy falls tomorrow. That will include the central west of the state and also the southern coastal regions. Sydney will see some of that wet weather. We're looking at showers, a possible thunderstorm in the afternoon or evening, and a top of 23 degrees. And Canberra as well is also looking at a rather wet and rainy day, a top of 16. Now, hazardous surf conditions also persist through the New South Wales coast from the Hunter and all the way north towards the border. Through Victoria tomorrow, we'll see some fog and low cloud through Melbourne and the central areas, then a day of patchy shower activity. A few areas where we could see some storms as well through the northwest and north central parts and through East Gippsland as well later in the day, where we could see some slightly heavier falls. Despite this though, Melbourne is not going to see much rainfall, maybe a shower or two, just a top of 18 degrees. Into Tasmania, where we are looking at a showery day. But what's different tomorrow is that much of the shower activity will be across the east of Tasmania, and that's because of this easterly flow bringing that moisture in there. Hobart tomorrow will see a wet, showery day, a top of 14 degrees. In South Australia, this low pressure system will continue to bring shower activity across much of the state. However, it will remain dry in the far north. We also have the risk of a few thunderstorms about from the Flinders and extending down towards the Eyre Peninsula. It will be cooler than average across much of South Australia tomorrow, including for Adelaide, which will see 19 degrees and a shower or two. In Western Australia, that's where we're seeing a very different story tomorrow. A high pressure ridge is bringing settled and mostly dry conditions. We'll see some fog and frost through inland parts of the south, and then to the north of this high, we'll see some brisk easterlies coming through the interior towards the Gascoyne and Pilbara there as well. Perth though will see a settled day and 25 degrees. Through the Territory, it will be a frosty start through the southern parts. Alice Springs seeing just 4 degrees tomorrow morning. And those afternoon temperatures through southern parts will also be much cooler than average for this time of year. Now, some of that cool and dry air is trying to make its way far north, however, not quite reaching Darwin tomorrow, which is still seeing very much average conditions, 32 degrees and sunny. That's all for our national weather forecast. As always, if you'd like some more information, please visit us at the Bureau's website, app or social media. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
And that's about it for the show today. Nice to have your company. What a great show. Peter Ridd, camels, farmers, which is terrible. They're all doing it tough, whether it's in Queensland or in Victoria or Tassie, doing it very hard right now. And it distresses me greatly when I focus on some of these stories. I think it's just appalling. I think that this is not how this country should act. This country needs to act a little bit, thrown a bit of decency into the mix. Fingers crossed, Peter Ridd's hopeful. I'm not so hopeful. Anyway, have a great night. Drive carefully. Be kind to your neighbours. Be kind to your friends. And be kind to yourself. This is the Country Telegraph.